Okay, Albion. I had to find a place where I could sit. The sunlight's coming in at a horrible angle right now, so I'm stuck in the corner here. There's me in the corner. Alright. Magazine game, right? Components? Pretty decent. I like my SPI components, and I like my fantasy looking SPI stuff. I think the graphics on the counters is really well done. The only thing I have a little bit of an iffiness about is, you know, the counters where a magic item is put on the back. Those kind of disturb me. Uh-oh, I may have just killed my power source, which would be bad because this would probably run out early. The map, general warning with these things, I store them kind of like you see them. I throw it in the map in the rule book, and this goes in a file folder, this goes in another place. These have been carried places. These paper maps wear out if you're not careful storing them. You can see I've got some splitting here, etc. I've got an extra copy of this one, which I probably wouldn't be terribly interested in selling, just because this one is kind of falling apart a little bit. I don't know why I have an extra copy. I bought it for like $5. I think I thought I was missing pieces or something from the original, or maybe my dad picked it up for me. I don't know. Anyway. The map has a lot of the charts and tables on it. That's pretty common for the S&T era. That makes lookup a little harder than what you're used to in the modern era. But you could make your own little play aids if the game, you know, took a lot of play. And this is actually a game that could take a lot of play. The problem, of course, is even when I got it, I had enough games that none of them got a huge amount of play. We're not talking about a huge amount of games in my park. We're talking about maybe, 20 war games or something total about the time that I got this. Maybe less. But it would only get played once, and then I'd put it away and play a different game. I think this is one that has a lot of different paths you can explore, a lot of different choices early on in the game. Do you go for the magic items? Do you go for casting enchantments? Do you do this? Do you do that? You don't have any options in terms of diplomacy or anything, but I think there's a lot of room to explore the system in this game. On the other hand, let's talk about the rulebook before I go any further. The rulebook is not terribly well organized. In particular, the sequence of play contains key rules that aren't repeated elsewhere in terms of how you actually conduct actions, etc. By taking shortcuts like this, they're able to keep it down to a 16-page rulebook with compendiums, 4 pages of compendiums of characters, magic items, etc. But this is a richer game than belongs in this size rulebook, and they really did take some shortcuts here. Organizationally, it's not as well organized as normal SPI games tended to be. It's got that, let's make these rules more user-friendly, let's make them better for the role players who might want to play this, or the newcomers to the wargaming hobby. Well, I find that actually tended to make the rules a little bit less clear, and much worse as a reference book. On top of that, the rules have maybe some ambiguities. I don't think they have any contradictions in them, but they do have things that are just problematic in the rules that I think need to be fixed. In particular, the combat system. The game itself as a play, let's get back to that. So we were talking about the replay value of it. The problem with the replay value is that the victory conditions always direct the game to a two-player loss. This is the first time I didn't see one, because both players ended up at a tie right at the edge. And hey, we can call the battle off at this point. We could say we neither of us lost, because we're both going to lose it if another character dies, basically. The problem in that is you can't just get rid of that 400-point limit because it's not a fairly balanced game without it. Is it a fairly balanced game with it? I don't know. Only in the sense that maybe you can orchestrate a tie, or you could step back and say, look, I'm at 199 and you're at 197. Let me win or we both lose type of deal, which seems bogus to me. It seems to come down to the luck of who falls where in the victory points scale. Maybe if you could get a preponderance of the points, you could say, look, I'm at 250 and you're at 140. Give it up, right? Because otherwise we both lose, and that's worse. You'd be better off under trollish rule. But that's really dependent on the players to accept any of those agreements. Instead of, okay, we both lose, that's fine. And many gamers will look at we both lose as a draw and as equivalent to the tie that we agreed to in this game as much as, anything else. And they would certainly prefer that tie to letting the other person win by some sort of agreed position. So why is it necessary to have that kind of almost semi-co-op mechanism in here? Well, it's necessary because almost invariably the Trolloc player is going to end up falling behind at the end. He's got all the advantages early on and can probably rack up points. It's expected he gets triple the points in the first scenario. I've never seen that happen in that, but maybe I'm terrible at playing trolls or something. Or more likely, I'm really bad on offense, and I haven't figured out how to score that. Or quite possibly, it wasn't play tested enough to really balance that out, and that scenario is ridiculous to achieve. So the weight shifts to the fairy player as the game continues. Eventually all the powers come in. Kerwillan with its huge forces comes into play. Forces that are able to move into the human areas, the mundane areas. And when that happens, well, the power balance shifts and the game no longer is in the trollish favor. And if the game went longer than it did, and if there was no point limit or whatever, or even with the length that it is with no point limit, I think the fairies will win every single game in terms of sheer points. And that's not fair, right? So this was an attempt to balance it. There was also another... okay, so I have one little gripe that I don't like about it, which is that you can't really influence most of the activation roles. There's no diplomacy in it like there is in Dark Emperor, which I actually like better as a game, even though a lot of people are unhappy about the fact that one player basically gets to do everything throughout it. This feels more like a war game, though. It doesn't have that hard board and kind of fantasy look to it. This looks like a complex operational war game, and it really kind of is. It's just got magic in it, and it's really, really nicely detailed. Those are the ideas that I like. That, hey, let's make a fantasy game that's as good as the better, historical war games that we make. And I think this one, it manages to do that in everything except for the stuff that I'm pointing out. And that's what's so enthralling about it and so cool about it. There are many, many great ideas in this game. And then, you have the richness of the magic handled at that same level. That makes it difficult to play, and that's another aspect to it. So the first couple turns I had of it on video, you see I'm cranking my ass off, and I do that a lot, even with games I end up enjoying, and I think I overall enjoy this one. But the mechanical systems in it are taxing, and the mental aspect of it, of knowing what all the magic items do, knowing what all the characters do, knowing where all the locations that can automatically heal or automatically damage, knowing all the different enchantments to make your decisions reasonably well. Man, that's just beyond me on a first playing. And that's one reason why this is really a game that needs kind of multiple playings in a row to kind of explore that system and really get the most out of it. And I think you can get 3 or 4 playings out of this right in a row and be fine with it, if only the damn thing had reasonable victory conditions. And that's the problem with it, of course. I don't know why the victory conditions, why the game wasn't sort of tweaked to get a better situation. But these victory conditions won't work for some players at all, and even for people like me who are very willing to take that semi-co-op concept into mind, it's very hard to come up with anything other than a both lose situation. Okay, so I rag on it a lot, but I do still like it a great deal. Maybe just for what it's aiming to do. It's never caught me the way some games like La Révolution Française do, because I really don't see a way around the flaw that I see in it, in the victory conditions. There are other little flaws in it too. So for example, the combat, which I went through quite a bit in complaining during play, the way casualties are assessed by the rulebook doesn't really work in mass combat. It penalizes a person for having a large army in terms of the hits they take on their characters. That does not seem reasonable at all. It seems like the bigger the army, the less damage your characters are necessarily going to take, or at least it shouldn't increase the damage that they take. If you're fighting a melee, you use the character strengths for combat. If you're fighting a regular combat, you use the combat strength, the army combat strength points. And it seems like this completely arbitrary and unreasonable decision there. That's easy enough to fix, though. It does add some more mental mechanical type complexity to it, though, because you have to make one more calculation, the number of character strength points that were applied to the battle. That's particularly tough because that's not just a number you can look at. So when I figure out the combat strength points for a battle, I can count them up right away. When I figure out the character strength points that are added to the battle, that's going to be the hero combat strength points plus the magical strength points. It's not just the character points that are there. And the magical strength points are going to be current magical values, so that boosts it way up. And it doesn't become trivial to figure out just how you need to apply that even. I'm pretty sure that's what you should reasonably apply. But there's nothing in the rules that points you towards that. There are a number of other places in the rules that are, I think, maybe not correct or completely effective. There's also the sequence of play. So attrition and enchantments happen at the beginning of the turn, and then there's 2 player turns, and they're always fixed Fomorian Fairy, which means that the sort of cycle of the play of the game doesn't really match the player turns. So enchantments aren't fitted into a particular player's turn. Attrition isn't fitted into a particular player's turn, but refit is. Which means that right after the attrition segment, the Fomorians get a refit phase, and then they can strike the fairies. A little bit of an unbalance there, but you can kind of pass that off and say, well, it's not a symmetrical situation. Okay, whatever. But it sure feels kind of like it in these circumstances. Why is it that the Fomorians get a chance to recover from any enchantments that are cast or any attrition that's taken before the fairies get a chance to, and then the Fomorians get to fight the fairies during that? Minor quibbles, but they feel a little funny. I think there's similar ones. Well, the boats come heavily into effect from that. So, for example, the fairies at any point can refit their boats by just sort of letting if both sides need refit, you let the Fomorians slip away and try to refit their boats. Well, once the Fomorians slip away, the fairies have the option to either refit their boats or to chase the Fomorians. Again, an unbalance in the way the play is set, and that's important just because of the attrition rules, which happen outside the 2 separate player turns. Anyway, this is a game that's always kind of intrigued me. The ideas behind it, what it's trying to do is so impressive. How close it comes is pretty damn impressive too. I think it's a lot more interesting to play the combat system here, and it's the things that make the combat system work are mechanically complex, and they are particularly the things that make me very gripey in the first video, the first combat video, the first playthrough video that I've got there. But it's so much better and more interesting than what shows up in War of the Ring, in Dark Emperor, in so many other games. That multiple challenge combat, there's so many cool decisions to make in there. The only game that I think kind of comes close in terms of the types of decisions is Scandinavia by AWE. I've got a video for that. That is a lot of fun. I have almost no complaints about that one, except that some of the powers are unbalanced. So if you're playing in a small number of players, there's a couple of players. First of all, you need some experience to understand why certain powers are unbalanced, and also if you're playing in a small number of players, you can't overcome that unbalance factor. But if you're playing in a full boat of players, you can, and you could also choose to leave certain powers out that are just overpowered. But for this, it's sort of one of those, overall the game just doesn't hold up because of some things that I haven't been able to figure out how to fix. And that's why it has kind of a moderate rating, because I think it's a terrific attempt, but the game just doesn't work as a game, and somebody needs to fix it. I don't know if the Scandinavian version of this that somebody did as sort of a print and play, but you buy it from him, I think, or maybe he does his self-publishing or something. I don't know if that resolves the problems. I'm too afraid to touch it because it's completely based on this design, and I'm just not sure that something... Well, I see no reason why something based on this design can't be done reasonably well, but this one doesn't quite do it. So if you're going to take a chance and if you want to look at this system, it might be better to go get that game than to get the magazine game, because this is going to take some work, definitely. And that one, maybe he got it right. I don't know. I'm afraid to see myself. But if for some reason he wants to send me a review copy to try to, showcase his game, if he thinks it solves all the problems, hell, I'd do it in an instant, unless it's print and play. I can't do print and play anymore. And I can't assemble a print and play is basically the problem. I don't have the time. I don't have the skills for it. So let's send this one up. Interesting game. Bit of a disappointment, but it's got so many cool ideas that it might be worth trying to fix. I hadn't been able to do it, but I didn't have much willpower to do so. Up it goes.